Greetings, wisdom keepers, wisdom seekers. Welcome back to Wisdom Drops, your source for daily drops of wisdom and savvy cat astrology. Tanya Lasagna back again, layering together all the nodal noodles and celestial sauce into something digestible. And today we are discussing the eclipse. It is a full moon eclipse that just happened this Tuesday, and we're going to dive into all of those details. So first things first, let's look at the chart and really dive into what it means to have an eclipse, period. And then we'll get into some of the specifics about this particular eclipse. Now, before we do that, make sure you're subscribed if you're new here and like this video, regardless of who you are, to support the channel, because it really helps the channel grow when you like the content that I make, y'all. So let's jump into what is an eclipse. An eclipse, okay, is when you have a new moon or a full moon conjunct the nodes of the moon. And so here you see from Tuesday's chart that we have the north node over here in Taurus at 13 degrees, and not pictured but present, equal and opposite to that at 13 degrees of Scorpio, is the current south node. The north node is where you're going to grow and make more stuff happen, or where things in general will wax, right? Like a candle, dipping a candle and it gets bigger and bigger. And it's also considered to be like where we should focus to get the ultimate growth experience for our souls. The south node, not pictured but opposite over here in 13 degrees of Scorpio at the time of this eclipse event, is where you're meant to excrete or let things go, where the scissors need to cut off the dead ends, right? Where you literally excrete feces from is the south node. And in this case, it's currently transiting Scorpio, which is super relevant because Scorpio is the literal excretion and this sort of carnage or death and rebirth experience. From the ashes rises the phoenix, right? So there's a lot of deep meaning just in the north and south node, and there's a lot of deep meaning across any axis, but in this case, the Taurus and Scorpio axis. So I really want to focus on those two kind of components to today's reading. And I also want to focus on the fact that Saturn is engaged in a T-square with the moon and the sun at the time of this event. Not to mention that Mercury is also conjunct the sun at the time of this event. So we're going to dive into what those things mean in particular in today's reading. And I just want to make sure that you know that an eclipse is considered a period of time where there's going to be fated events. Things that are supposed to happen, meant to happen, destined to happen, are considered to be happening during the influence of an eclipse. You'll feel it most intensely on the days surrounding immediately the eclipse itself. And you'll also seem to feel this a lot more intensely for the coming 2 weeks. So I didn't do this video on the day of the eclipse nor the day after, because I was simply feeling the eclipse vibe. Like in the ancient times, a lot of people said, don't look at it, don't do anything, really try to be like as neutral as possible, because so much is considered to be shifting during the eclipse time itself. Okay, so you know, the eclipses, we just did a little overview about what they mean, what they are, and what they might bring, given that it's going to be fated and big and life-changing, and in this case especially shocking, because we will also be discussing Uranus conjunct the moon, and I'm about to get into those details. But before I do, a little reminder to like this video if you have not already, subscribe if you're new here, and you can get a reading with me if you so wish down below in the description box. You'll see my website, wisdomdropsastrology.com. Wisdom drops are with Z's, okay? Astrology is with a regular S. And you can book a session there, and I will do a recorded reading, or if you so wish, a live reading with you through my website. So let's jump into some of these details now. Planetarily, what's what? Well, the north node is what's growing and it's conjunct the moon. So yeah, it's an eclipse. but what's coming in is going to be more tangible or tangibly related. Maybe you've been looking for land. Taurus is land. Maybe you've been looking for something food related in your life that's really like a new diet, and it's going to be shifting your whole world just because you realize I'm allergic to that food, or I'm actually more aligned with this food group than that food group. And so that could be like more of the practical stuff. It could also be like totally random and out of nowhere though, because you see this Uranus here, it looks like almost an ET with like a little radio on its head or something, but it's like a circle with this like cross, and like on either side of the cross there's like a parenthesis or whatever that is. And so anyway, like Uranus is lightning and sudden events and shocking events, tumultuous events, events that cause severance. I've known people who have had strokes and like heart attacks and stuff with strong Uranus aspects going on to their chart and in the transits. So, you know, Uranus really is this idea of like what is shocking and what is new and novel and different and unique, just as much as it is like almost like a genius sort of energy, or like a really zany, awkward person who has a lot to bring to the table, but is also very awkward socially. That is also under the realm of Uranus. The mad scientist is under Uranus, as is liberation, this idea of freedom and disconnection and like I say, severance. So there's a lot going on in that Uranus package, and the moon is the physical omen under this, because the moon in general in astrology, everybody, is all about the tangible material world. And in Taurus, the moon is in a comfortable place. The moon likes to be in the sign of Taurus. And so you have that going on at the same time that you also have this Uranus conjunction, and that shows you that there's a lot of physical surprises, all things put together, right? On the flip side, you see the South Node over here in Scorpio at 13 degrees. That's going to be conjunct Mercury and the Sun. So what is a South Node conjunct Mercury? We talked about a North Node conjunct Uranus. A South Node conjunct Mercury is what you're releasing, right? Because it's a South Node. But Mercury is what you think and how you think, and also how you communicate. So a deep form of communications in your life might be going through a transformation, because a South Node conjunct Mercury is all about releasing how one communicates. And the fact that it's in the sign of Scorpio means that it might be releasing more toxic communication patterns. So if you feel like you're healing and transforming how you think and how you talk, it's a great time to be doing that. Now, last but not least, let's talk about the Saturn T-square to these two things. Scorpio is the sign of death and rebirth, like I said earlier, transformation, walking through the darkness. It's the sign of the shaman, right? But Saturn is in this square aspect with those red lines to both the moon and the sun during this lunation. So you can see that Saturn's in a bit of a tense conversation. In other words, there's some like maybe tension going on, or maybe a need to reconcile different parts, because you can see in it in the angles, there's an opposition with the sun and the moon. That just means it's a full moon. Same with Uranus and Mercury, but Saturn's kind of like the in-between. And so it's almost like the reconciliation amidst this opposition. And so it's like a mediator, right? And that's what you call T-square in astrology, when you have two squares with an opposition. So anyway, Saturn being at the top of this triangle, or bottom as it may be on the screen in front of you, is really saying that the way out of this tension between this surprise and random events that we talked about with Uranus conjunct the moon, and this releasing toxic thoughts or communication with the Mercury conjunct the South Node over here in Scorpio, is Saturn. Saturn is the way forward. So Saturn is currently in its own sign of Aquarius at 18 degrees. And that makes it a pretty tight conjunction. It's a true T-square. Now, worth noting, Saturn rules the sign of Aquarius in original astrology, but in modern astrology, Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius. And we already talked about how Uranus is a part of this configuration. So it's just a little interesting thing to say, almost like an omen or a nod to the fact that Aquarius energy is going to be really important for us all moving forward through the next 6 months, and also through especially the next 2 weeks. So anyways, Saturn is the planet of structure and how you do things in a very like rigid level. It's a very like a form based planet. So it's like answering the question, what's your form, or how do you go about structuring yourself? What is the foundation and the framework to the building that is your life? And so Saturn is over here like, hey, I got structure for you. And you're to be answering the question, well, what is that structure during this time? And so Saturn is kind of like asking us, in my opinion, as an astrologer, to develop our own path forward and our own structure that we want to see cemented, as Uranus is shaking up and really like causing a kaleidoscope, or like one of those snow globes where it's just like all shaken up and chaotic, right? And as Mercury is over here like excreting whatever thoughts or like communications no longer serve us, Saturn's saying, well, like, what is the structure that you do want to come out of all this? And so I think a lot of us right now, I was just talking with a friend talking about their structure in their life. So a lot of us right now are probably on that same page where we're thinking like, hey, what's our real structure as we move forward through the Aquarian age? And what more appropriate time to ask that question as Saturn is in its own sign of Aquarius. So I think that that's you know, a good question to ask yourself. And another thing about Saturn is that it's kind of karma and dharma all in one. So it's like what you have coming to you, and maybe how you can find meaning through the work and the hard work, emphasis on the word hard work, that you do put forward through life. How can you leverage that or use that to get a clear path forward amidst what feels like an opportunity to grow physical possessions with that North Node in Taurus? So yeah, I think you'll be feeling a lot of feels, because obviously the South Node's in Scorpio, and you do have Venus there, which is how you relate with people. Mercury, the friendship planet, is there. So communications are going to be naturally deeper, because the South Node is like what comes more easily. So you will have deeper communications just more naturally with people, because two of the planets that really show how we relate with people are in the deepest sign, so to speak, Scorpio, which all signs are deep. And yeah, I agree with all the comments I've seen on here, like, you know, about that topic. We don't need to go into that, but I'll leave it at that for now, everybody. Make sure you like the video if you haven't. Thanks again for all your support. If you want to book a reading at Wizdom Dropz Astrology, the link for that is down below. Leave me a comment letting me know how the eclipse energy has been for you. And with that said, through next time, until next time, may the stars be with you. Peace.